One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo.
This has gone on too long.
Absolutely.
The game is up.
Yeah.
You cannot be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker.
Louise Hay gone, but pressure now piling on Keir Starmer to explain what he knew and when.
He has clearly repeatedly lied to the House of Commons and to the British people, and the only question he should now answer is when he will resign.
Well, she proved a massive hypocrite, so what other skeletons are the rest of the Cabinet harbouring? Also tonight...
Using the incorrect language, it's not suicide, that's offensive. Please correct your language.
Assisted dying is passed in Parliament, but how can we trust our politicians when they prove so low grade? Also...
Very bitter, very twisted, it's very sad. The fact that he's walked away, frankly, is a huge relief.
Reform UK have all the momentum, but does Nigel Farage's row with Ben Habib threaten to turn it sour? And... absolute chaos at the Oxford Union last night as it votes to call Israel an apartheid state, while an Israeli speaker's thrown out after people stamp on pictures of Gaza hostages. Also tonight... is calling someone a Welsh witch or telling an English person to go back home racist? Allegations of racism between Welsh and English Brits are being recorded as non-hate crime incidents. Tonight's panel are ready to go too. I'm joined by political consultant Suzanne Evans, podcast host and broadcaster Will Kingston, and journalist and communications consultant JJ Anisobi. And just what the hell is going on here? Is the Prime Minister behind a cover-up in Downing Street? First, your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Ben, thank you. It's just gone 9 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. Opponents of assisted dying are vowing to fight on after Kim Ledbetter's bill passed its first Commons hurdle today. The vote, which followed 4.5 hours of debate, saw 330 MPs in favour, with 275 opposed.
The ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 275. The ayes have it, and look!
Details show the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was among those who voted in favour of the bill. Legislation would allow terminally ill adults to end their lives with the approval of 2 doctors and a High Court judge. While the bill has sparked division, several stages remain before the bill becomes law, and a number of MPs indicated they could still vote against it if safeguards in the legislation were not strengthened. Now to some breaking news. 2 schoolboys aged 14 and 16 have been arrested after a suspected chemical attack, as 2 police officers have been rushed to hospital. That's according to the Sun newspaper. The incident unfolded at Surbiton Station near Kingston upon Thames in southwest London at around 4:20 p.m. today. We will bring you more as we get it. Now, Ukraine will ask NATO for membership next week. That's according to a letter seen by Reuters news agency. The letter reflects Ukraine's renewed push to secure an invitation to join NATO, which is part of a victory plan outlined last month by President Volodymyr Zelensky to end the war triggered by Russia's 2022 invasion. Meanwhile, in another interview tonight, President Zelensky said that he was willing to cede territory to Russia to end the war. The Ukrainian president said for the first time that his country could give up land temporarily in exchange for a NATO umbrella over the territory Ukraine still holds. The Met Police has apologised to victims of the Westminster so-called honey trap scandal after it accidentally sent an email which named all of them. The force also said it was referring itself to data watchdog, the information commissioner, over the breach. Police launched a probe after flirtatious messages were sent by someone calling themselves Charlie or Abby to as many as 20 people, including MPs, staffers and political journalists. And GB News understands that Number 10 was not aware of the full facts about Transport Secretary Louise Hay's past convictions, and they were not known until reports broke last night. It's also understood the 2014 conviction was not declared in Hay's transparency disclosures when she became Transport Secretary on the 5th of July. However, these reports are strongly disputed by those close to Hay. Downing Street has named Justice Minister Heidi Alexander as her replacement. Louise Hay's cabinet resignation came after it emerged last night she was convicted of a criminal offence before she was an MP. She admitted to falsely reporting a stolen work phone in 2013, calling it a mistake, and insists she gained nothing from the incident. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Ben.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening, hope you're well. Did Sir Keir Starmer knowingly let someone with a criminal conviction into government while preaching to the nation about ethics? The resignation of his Transport Secretary, Louise Hay, isn't the end of the matter, let me tell you that. And the PM is now under pressure to give the full facts. Shadow Cabinet Office Minister Alex Burghart has tonight demanded the PM come clean about when he first learned of Haig's historic conviction for fraud. And he accused Sir Keir of ignoring Labour's own promise of running a squeaky clean government full of ethics and transparency. Louise Hay admitted she reported her work phone stolen in 2013, only later to find it at home. And she described this as a genuine mistake and said she pled guilty to fraud in 2014 on the advice of her solicitor. And she claims Starmer was made aware of her conviction when she was given a job on the opposition front bench. Here's what the PM needs to answer tonight, or at least over the weekend. Is Miss Hay correct when she says the PM knew all along? And if so, if he didn't see Louise Hay's conviction as a disqualifying factor before her appointment to the Cabinet in July, why has it suddenly become one today? This is important because in 2022, Keir Starmer himself told the Commons that Boris Johnson couldn't possibly be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker, and he had to go.
The values symbolised by the door of number 10 must be restored. The game is up. You cannot be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker. Only then can the government function again. Only then can the rot be carved out. Only then can we restore the dignity of that great office and the democracy that it represents.
And by the way, I know she's gone now, but what a raging hypocrite Louise Hay was too.
This has been such a sorry saga for Boris Johnson and for our country. You know, first he claimed that no parties took place at all in Downing Street. Then he claimed that all the rules were followed. Now we know that that was a complete lie. Our position hasn't changed. This is a matter of trust and leadership. He has clearly repeatedly lied to the House of Commons and to the British people. And the only question he should now answer is when he will resign.
OK, well, for the record, I don't think Louise Hay should have ever been forced to resign at all, but she falls victim to the very low bar she and her party set during the hounding of Boris Johnson during Partygate for essentially eating crusty M&S sandwiches. You set the silly standard, now you're out of a job. But the focus now is on the Prime Minister. His government has been fighting so much sleaze, cronyism and scandal in its first 6 months that they make the Tories look like amateurs. Arsenal tickets, Taylor Swift tickets, £2.5 spectacles, a wardrobe for his wife, multi-million-pound penthouses, stuffing the civil service with Labour donors and aides, the Chancellor accused of lying on her CV, a row with farmers, dunking on pensioners, it goes on and on. So the big question is, did the Prime Minister cover up the truth about Louise Hay? And if so, what else is he covering up behind the curtains of number 10? Before getting reaction from my panel tonight, let's get the latest from this storm surrounding Louise Hay and indeed Sir Keir Starmer from our political editor, Christopher Hope.
Election is nearly 5 months ago and already we have our first resignation from the Cabinet of Keir Starmer's government. Louise Hay, the Transport Secretary, has stood down, resigned, replaced by Heidi Alexander. Louise Hay has gone because reports emerged that she had pled guilty to making a false report to police about a stolen mobile phone that she later discovered. But the question right now in Westminster is, what did Keir Starmer know about this conviction? According to Louise Hay, he was told when she entered the shadow cabinet in 2020. Fast forward to July this year, she becomes the Transport Secretary. What did Sir Keir Starmer know then when it happened? We understand that Louise Hay did not declare this conviction to Whitehall as part of her transparency process when she became the Transport Secretary and disclosing to senior civil servants anything which may have a direct or an indirect impact on the work she was doing. Number 10 say that the reason why she had to go is the full facts were not known, and the full facts became known with this reporting overnight into Louise Hay's background. But I think this weekend there are questions about what Sir Keir Starmer knew. Was he told the full story by Louise Hay? Her friends say she did tell the full story back in 2020, and if so, why on earth was she given a role as Transport Secretary with an oversight role to a small degree of the British Transport Police? Those are the questions, I think, for Sir Keir Starmer this weekend as he contemplates his first removal, his first resignation from his top team since he won power back in July this year. Christopher Hope, GB News, Westminster.
OK, so there we go. Did he know or didn't he know? This is going to be the big question, really, of the next coming weeks and months. I'm joined now by political consultant Suzanne Evans, podcast host and broadcaster Will Kingston, and the journalist and communications consultant JJ Anisobi. Good evening,
Hi.
Friday panel. Welcome along. Suzanne Evans, what do you make of all this? Louise Hay gone, fine, see you later. What a hypocrite. But the pressure now, as far as I'm concerned, is on Keir Starmer.
I have to say, I'm really pleased finally somebody in this shambolic cabinet has resigned. Your monologue, Ben, was brilliant, you know, exposing all the stuff they have done wrong. And I frankly can't understand why there haven't been umpteen resignations up till now, because it's been such a disaster. But there you are. Finally, one of them's gone. It's Louise Hay. And, yeah, she had to go. Now, did Starmer know or not? She says he did. He says he didn't.
Who's telling porkies?
But I have to say, I think if you are a man who has a Prime Minister, a former Attorney General and a top lawyer and a top prosecutor. How could you not have known what was going on here? How could you have appointed somebody to your cabinet who he must have known that she had a criminal record and didn't look into that? What also I find gobsmacking is that this criminal record happened 6 months before Louise Haigh became a Member of Parliament. How the heck did she manage to stay on the ballot paper, to still be a candidate and to become a Member of Parliament despite the fact that her local Labour Party must have known that she'd had this conviction? It is shocking. It's a massive cover-up. It's a disgrace. She should never have been an MP.
But I think the only disqualification would have been if she'd served 3 months or more in prison. She didn't serve any time. But I'm like, you can disagree with it, but that's just the rules.
You can talk about the rules and the
become an MP,
but the optics are terrible.
The optics are terrible.
She was a Member of Parliament.
Reform have got
an
MP who went to juvenile detention for kicking his girlfriend around the floor.
Yeah, but James McMurdoch isn't a cabinet member.
No, I'm not saying no, but I'm saying in terms of becoming an MP. You can't say how did she become an MP when there's people who have criminal convictions who are also MPs.
And I think it's wrong.
Yeah. And I don't think the reason I don't think she's a hypocrite is because this happened. She didn't do this when she was on the job. This was in her past. I believe in the British justice system. She did a crime. She served that penance for it, and now she moves on with her life. If it had to miss when she was an MP, I think it's hypocritical for you to commit a crime when you're an MP and then have a go at Boris Johnson for something as well.
I even think most people on the right would agree with you, but that's not the point here. The point here is that Starmer has built his whole brand in absence of any charisma or any values or any decent policy. He's built his whole brand on this whole I'm a prosecutor, I'm going to clean up Westminster attitude.
Yeah.
And the first 100 to 120 odd days where, God, it feels like 5 years, we've already seen so many examples of sleaze, of corruption, now of him literally breaking his own pledge to say if you're a lawbreaker, you can't be a lawmaker. And it's very obvious, and I think we'll get into this, that he did know. And if he did know, it just shows the hollowness of this man, the sheer hollowness of this man.
If he did know, he is now engaging in a cover-up because he is actively telling the press and the public, the great British public, who some voted for him, that he didn't have any idea about it. But not only did he know, and he allowed her in government and in the shadow cabinet, he is engaging in deceit now as well. I mean, that's what you're saying if you're saying he did know.
Well, let me do a Keir Starmer. Let me give you some evidence to the court. Number one, the way that they're framing this to say the full story has come out now. Like they're trying to say, well, obviously they knew something. Number two, political operatives in Westminster do their background research on cabinet ministers. And number three, Westminster talks. There is absolutely no way that they did not know about this before she became a cabinet minister.
Suzanne, so my next question to you is, who was the Labour MP, Keith Vaz? They used to call him Teflon Keith, is it?
Yeah.
So many scandals. There was the washing machine,
the washing machine salesman, the gay parties, all sorts of stuff.
He seemed to survive nuclear apocalypse, but Keir Starmer, it seems a bit Teflon as well. When are one of these scandals going to really dent his premiership? Because he's had so many so far, and he seems to just be cracking on.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Really, in the old days in journalism, you used to say, "Well, never mind about bad news stories because it's tomorrow's fish and chips, and people forget in about 3 days." But of course, now we live in a very different age, and it's on the internet forever. So that rule no longer applies. But I think there's something about being able to brazen it out and just keep going and keep going and keep your head up high and you get away with it. I mean, of course, the other story we've got rumbling on in the background is Rachel Reeves' CV.
Well, yes. So if Louise Haigh is going to go for this, why shouldn't Rachel Reeves go for
absolutely.
her?
You can't say you're an economist when you worked in customer services and get away with it, or you shouldn't be able to. But I think she's going to get away with it.
I think if Starmer had come out and said, I'm backing Miss Haigh and I'm going to keep her in the cabinet regardless, then I think this would be something that would be more trouble for him. But the fact that he essentially has forced her to resign, then it's a case of, all right, it's done. So it's kind of done. So if we can assume everything, but he is saying he didn't know the full story. That's what he's saying. He didn't know the full story. So presuming that he's telling the truth and he didn't know the full story, he has since he has found out the full story, he's acted correctly.
How can a man who's a lawyer not know the full story when he could have access to the court records?
I know, but listen, he's the leader of the party. As you know, he would not have gone through it himself. He's got 1,000 other things to do. Right. Someone in his team, someone whose job is to look through Miss Haig's stuff, will have looked through it.
Let me ask you this then. If it does come out in the coming days and weeks that Starmer did 100% know about this conviction when he elevated Louise Haigh to the shadow benches, does Starmer need to go? Because as I said to Will, he would have been involved in a cover-up by, at this point, saying,
I think he would need to go based on his own high standards. Yes, he would need to go. Yeah. Because if he didn't, then that would be hypocritical of him, 100%. But I think politicians need to, like the days of Keith Vaz, we need to get back to those days when people could make mistakes. And politicians should not be shouting across the floor, you should resign, you should resign. Someone does something wrong in politics, instantly, you should resign. Unless it's a real heinous crime, we should not be calling for politicians to resign. They are not priests. They are still just normal people like the rest of us.
But they have to be held to a higher standard, JJ. I'm sorry, they're just not normal people like the rest of us because they put themselves above the rest of us. They make laws over the rest of us. They tell the rest of us what to do. I'm sorry, we have every right to hold them to a higher moral standard, I think.
It was Labour. It was Labour and their friends in the media who set this very stupidly low bar for moral conduct in Parliament. Chasing Boris Johnson. I know it was Chris Pincher that was the cherry on the cake, but chasing Boris Johnson for stumbling into a gathering in Downing Street during the height of COVID, eating some crusty M&S sandwiches.
It wasn't just for him attending the parties because he lied about it as well. He was involved in a cover-up of it. But about the politicians who've then come out previously and said they've indulged in drug-taking, illegal narcotics when they were younger, should they be allowed to serve? Where do you draw the line? They haven't served any time in prison, but should they be allowed to serve?
Yes, I think so. I actually really enjoy this whole saga because the moral puritanism that the left indulges in, like, it's so fun seeing them hung up by their own petard, you know, in this day and age. You can excuse Boris because he was, you know, a mountebank, because he was outrageous, but it's the joyless awfulness of someone like a Keir Starmer. That's what makes this so enjoyable to watch.
The holier-than-thou attitude and the virtue signalling and the moral supremacy. It's like, give it a rest.
They brought it on themselves.
Which is exactly why, if it's found out that he's covering up, he should go. Tony Blair said in his recent book that Labour should be very careful about slinging mud at the other side, because if you sling mud at the other side, you've got to sling it at yourself when you mess up too.
Indeed. OK.
Bring back Blair.
Oh, no.
Yeah!
I don't know about that. Halloween was a few months ago, JJ. It's Christmas now. Right, let's move on. It's time now for our biggest and greatest Great British giveaway and your chance to win a whopping £50,000 in tax-free cash. It's the biggest cash prize we've ever given away, and it could be yours. Here's all the details you need to win.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements? Or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
OK, very good luck to you. Now, is abusing someone based on their Welsh, Scottish, Irish or English nationality racist? For example, if you called a Welsh person a sheep lover. More non-crime hate incident madness continues to rupture common sense. We'll be debating that next in our head-to-head. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
After the Hollywood ending that Wrexham Football Club have got, can Chorley FC benefit from a bit of the old celebrity magic dust?
I can't see why not. The guys have been down a few times now, and when they do come down, obviously they're bringing that with them. A little town like Chorley doesn't see much of the charts and big stars, so it's really nice to see them, and we always welcome them when they do come down.
And Mark, give us a flavour of the level of football. I understand you're in the National League North, right? That's 6 rungs down from the top flight. I mean, you're only just down the road from Manchester City, right? But I mean, give us a flavour of the two different worlds between your club and Man City.
Our players are all part-timers. So we've got kind of fitness coaches, we've got teachers, we've got all kinds of players who have full-time jobs alongside playing. Our average crowd is probably a tenth of what you get at Man City, probably even less than that. We get about 1,500 on a home game. The thing is, we we know where we are and we understand where we are, and we are a real community club. Tonight I'm ready now. I'm off to Marine, so off over to Merseyside. Playing the likes of Liverpool and Everton over on Merseyside would be kind of a dream come true. But we know where we are. We would just love to get to the Football League. So teams like Salford, Stockport County were in our division a couple of years ago, all flying now in the Football League. We just want to do the same. We sat down with the board last year and they told us the vision for the future, and that vision most definitely is that we want to be a Football League club. When we went to the Premier League, I know the boys have been saying that they 30 years will be in the Premier League and winning it. Well, let's hope we are, and let's hope I'm still around to see that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. It's time now for the head-to-head. And the non-crime hate incident insanity continues to develop as it's been discovered that the police have been investigating allegations of racism between Welsh and English people. So these include a woman who was called a Welsh witch and a man who was called a sheep. You can probably fill in the blank at home. These are among 13,000 incidents recorded in the year to June. But are these terms really that offensive? Joining me now to debate this is social campaigner Peter Tatchell and the comedian Jojo Sutherland. Good evening to you both. Thank you for joining me. Jojo, you're a Scot, aren't you?
I am. I'm a proud Scot. I was born in England, so I have a little bit of English protectiveness, but yeah, no, I'm very Scottish.
I was just trying to think of a word to insult the Scots, but I don't really have any. I mean, it's calling you a jock.
We're mean, we're sweaty socks, we're smelly jocks, we're all kinds of, alcoholic, wife battering. Do you know what I mean? We've had it all and we've lived with it.
So is that racist? If I called you a drunk jock, a sweaty whatever, is that racist?
Well, sadly, the statistics from the government data do suggest that Scotland does have a problem with alcohol, so we can't escape the facts. However, it's not actually racist. We're talking about xenophobia, which is a completely different thing. When Scotland isn't a race, it's about being xenophobic. But yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we have to live up to our stereotypes, but it's also very healthy to break down stereotypes. I think if we reinforce stereotypes, then we are walking into dangerous ground. It's not good enough to just go, yeah, we're all mean Scots, we're all drunks, and that we have this stereotype about us. We are responsible for breaking down our own stereotypes, but we are still allowed to laugh at ourselves.
OK. Peter, so if I had a friend who was Welsh and I call them a sheep so-and-so, is that racist or indeed xenophobic, as Jojo suggested?
Well, it's insulting and offensive, but it's not racist because Welsh people aren't a race.
Is it worthy of a non-crime hate incident?
Not really, no. I mean, I would not do that. I wouldn't approve that kind of language. But I think the police really need to tackle serious crimes. And when there are so many unsolved crimes, burglaries, sexual assaults on women, and so on, the police really need to get their act together and deal with the serious problems that people face every day.
Jojo, why do you think... I've got this theory, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but...
I will correct you if you're wrong.
Good, thank you. I call myself by default a Brit because I love the UK, I love Great Britain, and I tend to... Maybe I'm stereotyping here, but I meet, for example, Welsh people or Scots. My wife's family are Scottish, and they will first say they are Scottish. And yes. A lot of the time, they're quite disparaging towards the English as well. I tend to feel that, for example, the Scots have this... Some do, anyway. Again, I know some...
Oh, no, darling, we all do. We hate you.
Yeah, why? Why do you hate us? We love you.
But this is the interesting disparity, is in fact that because I actually feel quite sorry for English people, because Scottish has a very, very strong identity, as do the Welsh, as do the Irish. You, as English people, you have always got to apologise for yourself, and I'm sorry for that, but you brought it on yourselves. But we do...
What did we do wrong?
Scotland does have this really patriotic sort of sense of we're Scottish and Welsh and Irish, and I always sometimes think the English do have to constantly apologise for being English, which I think is a shame. But we just want to beat you at something, and could you just give us independence? That's all we ask.
Well, I was going to say, Jojo, maybe it's the equivalent of say, small man syndrome. You know, where
maybe.
You know, I say a lot of the time I'm an Arsenal fan, and I tend to hear from Spurs fans a lot concentrating.
Finish that sentence.
Peter, you've got roots in Australia.
Well, actually, roots going back to Somerset in England in 1560.
Oh, OK, so you've done your family tree then.
Yeah, I have indeed.
For you, Bob. If I called you an Aussie criminal, for example, would you be upset by that? Would you go calling to the Rozzers to report me?
Certainly not, no. I mean, yeah, I don't think it's nice to use that kind of language, but, you know, to me it's water off a duck's back. And I don't think the police need to be wasting time on these petty kind of issues.
OK.
You know, there are serious issues where people may threaten or insult Scottish or Welsh or Irish people with malicious intent in a menacing, threatening way that makes them fearful, then that should be addressed. You know, no one should live in fear and be abused in a way that makes them feel unsafe. That should be actioned, but not these little name-calling. That's nonsense.
OK. It's an interesting debate. Thank you both, Peter and Jojo. Appreciate your company this evening. It's interesting what I was talking to Jojo about just there, about, you know, do you identify as British or are you English or Welsh first? As I said, I am British by default, but I don't always seem to get the same love back from, say, the Welsh or the Scots. I'm sure there are plenty who love the English, but there are a few barbs here and there. Let us know what you think. What's your default position? Are you British? Are you English? Are you Northern Irish, Scottish, Welsh, whatever? Let me know. gbnews.com/your say. Right, up next, MPs voted to legalise assisted dying in a historic vote today. My panel will join me again to debate whether this monumental change in our country will be a force for good or bad. This is Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The weekend is upon us and it's going to be much milder than it has been for the past few days. Not a lot of sunshine around. Most places, certainly tomorrow, will be dry. Low pressure sitting to the west, high pressure sitting to the east. That means our winds are coming up from the south. There is this weather front draped across the country at the moment, fizzling out as it crosses eastern England, so just a few spots of rain here, but it's made for a very wet day across parts of Scotland. That rain heading its way up across the Northern Isles. Further showers following on here, but most other places having a dry night. A lot of cloud around. That will keep those temperatures up. Still pretty chilly out there this evening across the east, but by morning, 6-7 degrees Celsius, and in the west, well, we start the weekend in double digits, and for most of us, a very mild Saturday. For most of us, though, it's also going to be a fairly cloudy Saturday. A lot of that cloud sitting over the hills as well. So some poor visibility on some of the higher routes. The hills, though, acting as a bit of a barrier. So with some shelter, parts of northwest England and northeast Wales may well see some good breaks in the cloud. The same goes for northeastern parts of Scotland here. I suspect we should see some good spells of sunshine as we go through the day. But for most, it will be predominantly cloudy. That cloud, as I said, tending to sit around, particularly over the hills. But it may break up a little as we go through the day, so you may see skies tending to brighten. But a showery rain will drift its way across northern Scotland. The odd shower elsewhere in the west, but many places just having a dry day. And it will be mild, double digits certainly, and many places getting into the teens. Where we see a bit of sunshine, those temperatures could be a little higher. Still quite breezy, particularly in western areas. Getting very windy on Saturday night across the northwest of Scotland. Still gusty here on Sunday. A bit more rain on Sunday. This line will work its way from west to east, and then another band of showery rain will come in from the west as well. So, yeah, it will be a bit wetter on Sunday, but still it won't rain all day. There'll be some brighter spells coming through. And, yes, the wind's still coming up from the south, so Sunday also looking very mild.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, welcome back. Your comments have been flying in about the, do you call yourself British or English or Welsh and so on. I'm just going to read a few before we proceed with the next segment. So, Angry Bear, good evening. You said, I'm Black Country first, then English, then British. All good things come in threes. JJ,
I'm Black Country, mate. I'm a yam-yam. Dudley, Briley Hill.
That accent's appeared from nowhere.
Well, I'll tone it down for the telly.
Before.
Alan, you say, good evening, Alan. Thank you for tuning in. Alan, you say, I'm Cornish. OK, Ronnie, you say, us English daren't stand up and shout about our patriotism for fear of getting locked up. The Scots are welcome to their independence, as far as I'm concerned. Yorkshire, you say, surprisingly, English by birth, Yorkshire by the grace of God. Philip, you say, Ben, I'm English and always will be. Ken, you said too, I'm Cornish first, then British. And Paris, you said, Ben, Scotland loves you. Oh, hi. Thank you, Paris. Is that a good enough accent? 4 out of 10? Anyway, keep those coming in. We'll continue to read them out as the show goes on. OK, moving on. There was, of course, this historic vote today. MPs have voted in favour of the legislation of assisted dying, the legalisation, of assisted dying in England and Wales. The vote, which followed 4.5 hours of debate, saw 330 MPs in favour with 275 opposed. So,
the ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 275. The ayes have it, and look!
Yeah, so a very slim majority, as I mentioned. Details show the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was among those who voted in favour of the bill. Legislation would allow terminally ill adults to end their lives with the approval of 2 doctors and a High Court judge. The debate sparked division across the Commons, including this moment between Conservative MP Danny Kruger and Labour MP Kat Eccles.
Assisted suicide is legal, including in Oregon.
What?
Catherine
Eccles, point of order.
He's using the incorrect language. It's not suicide. That's offensive. Please correct your language, Mr.
Sorry if offence is given. The fact is that the value of actually having a bill in black and white is that we do need to see what the law really is. And what this bill would do, it would amend the Suicide Act of 1961. It will allow people to assist with a suicide for the first time.
OK, as you know, I'm joined again by my panel, Suzanne Evans, Will Kingston, JJ Anisobi. First of all, wow, what a day. A mammoth debate in the Commons. Some MPs saying that it should have been much longer, though, much more thorough.
I was going to say, it wasn't a mammoth debate, was it? 4.5 hours to debate something that's actually going to change the whole face of medical care in this country. I think it's disgraceful, actually. This bill has been rushed through. I know it's not the end of the road. It now has to go to committee stage, where it will be pulled over and pulled apart, one hopes, before, of course, the third and final reading, and then it goes to the House of Lords. So it's got a long way to go. I'm opposed to this, I'll be honest. I'll put my cards on the table and say I'm opposed to it. I think we need to do much better in terms of palliative care. And my concern is that this is going to be seen... It's a very slippery slope. People use the slippery slope argument. I think it's more a logical cliff. What is going to happen is if this becomes law, then all the safeguards that are put in place are going to be shifted and they become movable goalposts, because that's what's happened in every other country in the world where this has happened. So Danny Kruger there was talking about, or starting to talk about Oregon. You know, in Oregon now, you can choose to end your life with medical help if you're an anorexic, if you've got arthritis. Now, it's a horrible disease to have, but, you know, again, we need to talk about pain control. Belgium, children now can choose assisted suicide.
Really?
I use choose in inverted commas because, you know, I think the whole issue of choice here is a really difficult one. What's choice, what's coercion, what's you feel like a burden, you've got to do something about it. And in Canada now, death doesn't have to be reasonably foreseeable. This bill, it's supposed to only be allowed to happen if you've got 6 months to live. Well, a very good friend of mine was given 24 months to live. He had terminal cancer, was preparing to die. 7-8 years later, he's now still alive. The tumours have gone, the treatment's been successful.
Can I just clarify that? As a matter of fact, it is not true that the slippery slope has played out everywhere that this has been tried. In Australia and New Zealand, there has not been any further extension of what the initial legislation intended, and there has not been a single case where they've noticed that this actual legislation has been abused. So I think we need to compare the UK to closer cultures to our own, like Australia, like New Zealand, as opposed to Nordic countries like the Netherlands.
Canada and Belgium, I think, are pretty close to us.
What do you make of that Danny Kruger exchange with the Labour MP Eccles saying, please don't use the word suicide, it's offensive? I mean, for me, that just blew my mind. I was watching that and I was thinking, these are the types of people, I'm referring to the Labour MP here, who are deciding on such a deeply serious and potentially grave piece of legislation, and they're talking about offensive language, suicide. It's amending the Suicide Act of whatever year it was. What do you make of that, Will?
Well, look, it's a silly little diversion to what was actually otherwise, I think, the very best of the British Parliament. I agree with you that the process was too short. I agree with you that it wasn't good enough for what is such a serious issue. But I've rarely been more moved listening to politicians on both sides discuss an issue, and I thought it was genuinely very well considered on both sides. I thought it was very emotional on both sides. I actually thought that this was the best of Parliament today.
That's the problem, isn't it? It was very emotional, and I don't think we should make our laws based on emotion, which is a very fluid thing, a very personal thing. You know, lawmaking should be about facts, it should be about consequences. And I think that was part of the problem with this debate. It actually was too emotional.
And a lot of it seems to be sort of motivated by Esther Ranson as well.
Yeah,
You know, some people...
Esther Ranson, who, you know, I'm very sorry for the situation that she finds herself in, but, you know, Esther Ranson, who was very happy to let unvaccinated people die during the COVID pandemic and didn't have a second thought about their health and their welfare, I think she's a bit of a hypocrite, frankly.
I wouldn't go as far as saying she's a hypocrite. I think it would be impossible to ask our politicians to not vote with their heart sometimes and with emotion. But I think, is it Rupert Lowe, discussing earlier with you? Rupert Lowe took the question to his constituents. But ultimately, it's about what the country wants.
But he was widely slammed for that.
And I don't think he should be.
I don't think he should have been. He was widely criticised for doing that.
I think he did exactly the right thing.
I think he only got about, sorry to keep interrupting,
just over 1,000.
2,000 or 1,000.
1,800.
But the fact is, he opened up to his constituents. If they choose to not go and make their voice heard, that's up to them. So whether it's 10 people who gave him their opinion or 1,000 people, he has done what he was mandated to do by the people who voted for him. I think that's the correct thing to do.
I think he did the wrong thing. I'm a great fan of Rupert Lowe. I think he's a great MP, but I think he was wrong on this occasion. You know, how did he do that poll? I presume it was done online.
No, it was in person. You had to go with your identification to prove that you were in the constituency.
So that immediately makes it very difficult for some people to take part in that poll.
And wasn't it nice to see Nigel Farage? You mentioned the civility of the debate. Nigel Farage said it's a shame that we can't have this every other day of the week when we're dealing with issues in Parliament. But isn't it nice to see issues being discussed where where the parties aren't being whipped into, into submission by the powers that be. I mean, surely, I've always thought, surely you are obliged to go with what your constituents voted you in for, not the party line.
Yeah.
It kind of contradicts the whole democratic process, as far as I'm concerned.
It would be great if we could get back to a place where our politicians were able to vote freely and vote for what we are telling them. Because my local MP, I voted for her because I think she's great. I didn't vote for Keir Starmer, I voted for my local MP. And it would be great if they could represent us and not represent the leader.
I think I'd like to see, I do agree, I think MPs should have more of a free vote and not be whipped, with the exception if it's something that was in the manifesto. Then I think if you stand on a particular manifesto, then I think as an MP you have an obligation to vote in favour of that manifesto.
Yeah. And Reform UK, of course, was split. Nigel and, was it Rupert Lowe, who voted for, and the rest of them, James McMurdoch, who are those guys? Lee Anderson, voted against.
This goes to what I think is such a fascinating part of this whole debate, which is that it split both parties down their kind of traditional tension spots, in that on the right you've got this gap between libertarians and social conservatives, and on the left between socialists and progressives, and it split both of them equally. And now, actually, I think you can see on both sides where different people stand. So Susan and I would both be on the right of politics, but I'm a libertarian. I believe in this measure. I think it's the right thing to do. It will be interesting to see how this actually then plays out and the impact it has on the parties going forward, and which of those differing strands of each party can actually take precedence in the coming months and years ahead.
OK, how would you have voted today if you were an MP?
I would have voted for the bill.
Suzanne?
Against.
I'd have abstained.
Yeah,
I've got the fuck out here.
Genuinely, I'd have abstained. I was at Parliament earlier this week and I spoke to several MPs about it. Prior to that, I had been fully in support of it. But actually, after speaking to the MPs and hearing their side of the argument, I think I'd have had to abstain.
I'm still torn. Normally, I'm quite opinionated and set on things, clearly, but I don't know.
I think the vote's going to move when it's gone through committee stage and when people have actually had time to drill down into the detail of this bill. That's my prediction.
Yeah. I've said a couple of times this week, I would have, 6 months ago, said, of course, we should treat people with dignity when they want to go, and, yeah, why not? You wouldn't treat a dog like that. But now I've spent more time to look into it and heard the other sides of the argument, links to eugenics and so on in America and whatever else. I just don't know. I'm completely split. I'm quite glad I'm not an MP, actually, today. OK, fascinating debate. Thank you, panel. Coming up next, the rapist and murderer Stephen Ling, who took the life of Joanne Tulip 27 years ago, is set to be released from prison following a recommendation from the parole board. Doreen Salisbury, the mother of Joanne, joins me next to discuss this horrifying reality. This is Patrick Christys Tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BlackFriday25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
My next guest knew George Carman rather intimately. Indeed, he immediately asked her for her hand in marriage when they first met. Karen Phillips knew Carman from 1986 and was a close friend until his death in 2001. Karen has used court transcripts and personal documents to construct her new book, Get Carman. There it is. And here you are. Karen, thank you very much indeed. So you knew him very well, and actually he began to write a little bit of an autobiography just in the weeks before his death. And from those pages, I was struck by the amount of uncertainty that there was about the man. This man who was so confident in court, who charmed juries so famously, but in some ways felt that he was an actor, in some ways felt that he was fighting back nerves and uncertainties. Is that true?
I think he was quite worried about every case. It was much more that he was concerned for the client. He always wanted to do his best. He worked so hard to win a case, not really for his personal satisfaction, but because he didn't want to let people down.
His success rate was extraordinary, and, you know, I'll choose my words carefully here, but shall we say that many people were surprised at the time that Jeremy Thorpe was found not guilty. It was astonishing in the case of Jonathan Aitken, for example, that the principal charge against him, which was that he'd been corrupt in arms dealings, I don't think that was ever actually reached during the court. It seems even more surprising today that people who were employed by Mohammed Fayed were believed in the case of Neil Hamilton. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, his results are extraordinary.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick, Christys, tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Just a very quick correction. In the previous segment, I said that Nigel Farage voted for assisted dying. He, of course, voted against assisted dying. Not a big deal, but just thought I'd clarify. Anyway, we move on. Killer and rapist Stephen Ling tragically took the life of 29-year-old Joanne Tulip 27 years ago and is set to get released following a recommendation from the parole board. Mr. Ling was sentenced to life in 1998 after admitting his attack on Joanne in Stamfordham, Northumberland. Now, at the age of 49, he could be on our streets after his 5th parole hearing. And I'm joined now by the mother of Joanne, Doreen Salisbury. Doreen, good evening. Thank you for joining me. Really appreciate it. Look, this must be horrifying for you and invoking so many old memories, I guess, of what happened to you and your daughter and your family. Your first reaction, please, to the news that he could soon be out on the streets.
Oh, just totally shocking in view of such a violent, sadistic attack on my daughter, which couldn't be any worse, really, with what he did. That he's going straight out into the community and not even to the halfway house into open prison. It's really terrifying that they've made a decision like this. Can't really understand it either when, you know, the violent offender being released, especially in the context of the government pledge to reduce violence against women and girls in the next 10 years, and then they go and release somebody like him.
So Ling was initially ordered to serve at least 20 years, wasn't he? But I think in 2009 you were dealt another blow when the High Court said it would change that term to 18 years.
Yeah, it was originally 18 years at the trial, but it was Jack Straw who upped it to 20 years. And he wasn't a judge, he was a politician, and he wasn't allowed to do that. So the appeal back to the original tariff of 18 years went through court in 2009, yes.
Do you
so he served 27 years, he will have served 27 years.
Do you feel like justice when he was initially sentenced, did you feel like justice had been done? Were you happy with that sentence?
We were happy, but I never ever thought, because of the violence and the seriousness of the offence, I never ever thought he would ever get out. Just thought he would be there, you know, for the rest of his life, sort of thing, because it was so bad. But we think that the parole board release into the community is purely political, because if it had been to an open prison, the Secretary of State for Justice could have blocked it, as did Dominic Raab and Robert Buckland. 2022 for Dominic Raab and 2020 Robert Buckland. We believe that it's a political angle they've taken.
Wow. I mean, we can't obviously... We can't prove that, of course, but you have the best intuition.
That's what we think.
You know this case, of course, inside out. But Ling, of course, he was never formally even convicted of rape, was he? And he won't be on the sex offenders list.
No, the judge decided at the trial that because the murder was the greater offence, that he decided not to put the rape to trial.
Even though he admitted raping her?
Yeah, he's still admitting rape in prison. And because there would be an abusive court process and it would upset the family. And of course, now the bottom line is he's not a convicted sex offender, which is absolutely horrendous because he could be living on a street near you, next door to you, and you wouldn't know.
I mean, Doreen, I mean, that fact alone is just insanity. How can a man so brutal as Ling, who admits raping your daughter, not be convicted of it after admitting it, and B, when he's out, not be on the sex offenders list?
That's right. That's right.
Doreen,
I think he in prison. I think he from the hearing and from the summary, the decision summary, he is quite happy to be on the sex offenders register. So why can't he just be on it and be convicted?
I'm speechless, Doreen. I really am. And look, I guess I'm very sorry to be talking about this again, but it's in the news. But I want to ask you, Doreen, you know, your memories of Joanne, and I want to talk about the happy times of her life.
She was a really happy girl. She was always laughing, bubbly blonde, hairdresser, always chatting, you know, loved to party and out with her friends and everything. And I wish I could retain that picture of her, the happy girl. But all I see, and I still see in my head, is when we identified her on Christmas Day, when everybody was eating their Christmas lunch, we were identifying Joanne. And also the attack, what she must have gone through. I still have nightmares about that. Especially at the minute when the parole board hearing, everything was right at the front again of your head, you know. And I mean, all those sexual things that he did in 1997 and the thoughts and fantasies he had then, he still has now in prison. So I don't believe what they've done, the parole board, they've ticked all the boxes. He's done all the work and all the treatment and all the therapy for his offence. All the boxes are ticked. But what they haven't done is stand back and look at the man, what he did in 1997 and what he's still doing now in prison. And not socialising with women either. He hasn't, you know, he's in prison.
Yeah.
So when if he'd been in open prison, he could have been tested.
Yeah.
But now and I'm really terrified that this man, he is so dangerous and he's like a ticking bomb.
Doreen, I'm so sorry to hear that you've got Joanne's final moments in your head and not the beautiful girl that, you know, you remembered her as a child. And it breaks my heart and brings me close to tears, actually, to hear you say that. I'm very sorry to hear what you've been through. Yeah, thank you for joining me this evening, Doreen.
All right.
And we'll keep tabs on this story and hopefully catch up soon when we have an update.
OK.
Just an awful story. And, of course, she was killed on Christmas Day and we're coming up to Christmas. So you have to wonder, you know, Doreen's coming up to Christmas now. It's evoking even more memories. It's just heartbreaking. And why is this man not on the sex offenders list as well? He's admitted raping Joanne. It's just unforgivable. Unforgivable injustice. Back in a tick. Tomorrow's newspapers are coming up in the next hour. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The weekend is upon us and it's going to be much milder than it has been for the past few days. Not a lot of sunshine around. Most places, certainly tomorrow, will be dry. Low pressure sitting to the west, high pressure sitting to the east. That means our winds are coming up from the south. There is this weather front draped across the country at the moment, fizzling out as it crosses eastern England, so just a few spots of rain here, but it's made for a very wet day across parts of Scotland. That rain heading its way up across the Northern Isles. Further showers following on here, but most other places having a dry night. A lot of cloud around. That will keep those temperatures up. Still pretty chilly out there this evening across the east, but by morning, 6-7 degrees Celsius, and in the west, Well, we start the weekend in double digits, and for most of us, a very mild Saturday. For most of us, though, it's also going to be a fairly cloudy Saturday. A lot of that cloud sitting over the hills as well. So some poor visibility on some of the higher routes. The hills, though, acting as a bit of a barrier. So with some shelter, parts of northwest England and northeast Wales may well see some good breaks in the cloud. The same goes for northeastern parts of Scotland. Here, I suspect we should see some good spells of sunshine as we go through the day. But for most, it will be predominantly cloudy. That cloud, as I say, tending to sit around, particularly over the hills. But it may break up a little as we go through the day, so you may see skies tending to brighten. But a showery rain will drift its way across northern Scotland, the odd shower elsewhere in the west, but many places just having a dry day. And it will be mild, double digits certainly, and many places getting into the teens. Where we see a bit of sunshine, those temperatures could be a little higher. Still quite breezy, particularly in western areas. Getting very windy on Saturday night across the northwest of Scotland. Still gusty here on Sunday. A bit more rain on Sunday. This line will work its way from west to east, and then another band of showery rain will come in from the west as well. So yeah, it will be a bit wetter on Sunday, but still it won't rain all day. There'll be some brighter spells coming through. And yes, the wind's still coming up from the south, so Sunday also looking very mild.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo.
Very bitter, very twisted. It's very sad. The fact that he's walked away, frankly, is a huge relief.
100,000 members, Andrea Jenkins in the ranks and council seats in their sights. Reform UK have all the momentum, but does Nigel Farage's row with Ben Habib threaten to turn it sour? And just why did Sir Keir Starmer, pictured here, cross the floor of the Commons to speak with Nigel Farage today? And what exactly did the Reform man whisper into the PM's ear? Also tonight... Deary me, chaos at the Oxford Union last night as it votes to call Israel an apartheid state, all while an Israeli speaker is thrown out after people stamp on pictures of Gaza hostages. Unbelievable. The first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages are on the way, and tonight's panel are ready to go too. I'm joined by political consultant Suzanne Evans, podcast host and broadcaster Will Kingston, and journalist and communications consultant JJ Anisobi. And all hail the pro-family revolution. Can you guess who just dropped one of the best Christmas ads ever?
You place the flowers in the vase that you bought.
Reform UK are motoring, but does the Habib row threaten to spoil the celebrations? First, your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Ben, thank you. It's just gone 10 o'clock. These are your headlines. Ukraine will ask NATO for membership next week, according to a letter seen by Reuters news agency. The letter reflects Ukraine's renewed push to secure an invitation to join NATO, which is part of a victory plan outlined last month by President Volodymyr Zelensky to end the war triggered by Russia's 2022 invasion. Meanwhile, in another interview tonight, President Zelensky said that he was willing to cede territory to Russia to end the war. The Ukrainian president said for the first time that his country could give up land temporarily in exchange for a NATO umbrella over the territory Ukraine still holds. Now, back in the UK, opponents of assisted dying are vowing to fight on after Kim Ledbetter's bill passed its first Commons hurdle today. The vote, which followed 4.5 hours of debate, saw 330 MPs in favour, with 275 opposed.
The ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 275. The ayes have it, and look!
Details show the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was among those who voted in favour of the bill. Legislation would allow terminally ill adults to end their lives with the approval of 2 doctors and a High Court judge. While the bill has sparked division, several stages remain before the bill becomes law, and a number of MPs indicated they could still vote against it if safeguards in the legislation were not strengthened. 2 schoolboys aged 14 and 16 have been arrested after a suspected chemical attack as 2 police officers were rushed to hospital. That's according to reports in the Sun newspaper. The incident unfolded at Surbiton Station near Kingston upon Thames in southwest London at around 4:20 p.m. today. It's understood 2 British Transport police officers were attacked when they approached 2 teens acting suspiciously, and they were taken to hospital. A man who went on a shooting and stabbing spree in the Scottish Highlands has been found guilty of murdering his brother-in-law and attempting to kill 3 other people. Finlay MacDonald shot and killed John McKinnon in the summer of 2022 and later targeted his wife, Rowena, and another couple in Skye and the mainland Highlands. The court heard that the 41-year-old's actions were triggered after discovering his wife's plan to leave him. Although he claimed diminished responsibility, the jury found him fully in control of his actions. And Greg Wallace has been dropped as an ambassador of a charity after stepping down from MasterChef amid allegations of inappropriate sexual comments over 17 years. Last night, the TV presenter thanked fans for their support after 13 people, including broadcaster Kirsty Walk, made claims accusing him of using sexualised language on MasterChef in 2011. Ambitious about autism has now announced it is no longer working with the 60-year-old TV host in the light of recent allegations. Production company Benije UK says it's launching an external review with Wallace fully in cooperation during the investigation. His lawyers insist the claims are entirely false. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Ben.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. Is everything okay at Reform UK? Because they enjoyed a big day yesterday after announcing they'd poached Dame Andrea Jenkins and, indeed, reached 100,000 members. But the buzz was overshadowed somewhat by the departure of former Deputy Leader Ben Habib, the no-nonsense politician who helped steer the party through its early days with Richard Tice. Habib announced he was no longer affiliated with Reform in an announcement yesterday morning, shortly before Dame Andrea took centre stage.
HQ at Reform has forbidden the new branches they've set up from having me speak to them. It seems these criticisms that I have, ideological as well as constitutional criticisms I have of the party, are an affront to them. But I think that their prohibition on my speaking, their prohibition on my free speech, their reluctance to democratise, their ideological differences with me now leaves me no option but to say I'm not affiliated with Reform, I'm afraid.
So that was in the morning, and then last night Michelle Dewberry asked Nigel Farage about the row, and he didn't pull his punches.
Champagne moment of the day. I mean, it was a good day, but Ben Habib announcing he's not with us really was the absolute icing on the cake. He's attacked me more in public than the Labour Party have. He's gone very bitter, very twisted. It's very sad. The fact that he's walked away, frankly, is a huge relief.
It's fair to say Nigel's comments sparked a fierce backlash from some quarters. People online said, I have to say Nigel Farage screwed up royally tonight on the TV when talking about Ben Habib. Disingenuous, rude and just plain nasty. There was no call for that whatsoever. Another person said, Ben Habib spoke out of principled disagreements. Nigel Farage spoke out of personal spite and didn't address any criticisms. A leader of men must put principles and the interests of his people above pettiness. Disappointing response from Farage. Others, though, did back Nigel. One ex-user said, Ben Habib did nothing but snipe from the sidelines. Comedian Lee Hurst said, Ben Habib has been quite unhappy for some time. If he truly wanted to defeat the Uniparty, he would have rolled up his sleeves and got on with the job. Instead, he's become a go-to guy for the media to snipe at reform. Originally, I thought well of Ben Habib, but I'm disappointed that his apparent self-centred view has clouded his judgment. As to the main objective, a talent wasted. All this comes, of course, when a new poll yesterday from Find Out Now put Reform at a stonking 22%, a record high, just 3 points behind Labour and 5 behind the Tories. And tonight, The Telegraph's Camilla Tominey penned a buoyant new column titled Farage is outgunning the Tories. They're running out of time to get their act together. Reform is gaining momentum and could soon initiate the biggest political revolution since Brexit. So, is she right? And does the fallout from the Habib row threaten to derail Reform's progress? Let's get the thoughts now of my panel. Political consultant Suzanne Evans, podcast host and broadcaster Will Kingston, and the journalist and communications consultant JJ Anisobi. Welcome back, panel. Suzanne Evans, you've had your fair share of experiences with Nigel Farage. What do you make of this Habib row?
I don't think it's going to make any difference to the success or otherwise of Reform whatsoever, I'm afraid. It's going to be seen ultimately as a little local row that will blow over. I agreed with quite a lot of what Ben Habib said. I think Nigel could have been a little bit more magnanimous. To be honest, I think he was slightly rude.
He did make me laugh, though.
Well, obviously,
I know some people said it was nasty or this and that, but it was maybe on a superficial level. It did make me chuckle a little bit.
Well, Nigel's a great showman.
Yeah.
He likes to get a good line out there, and sure enough, it's been picked up and it's been run with. So, yeah, but ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, I'm afraid this is going to come to nothing.
So can I just ask who you back in this row, Suzanne? Nigel or Ben? Because there's this accusation Ben's been sniping from the sidelines. And
I know what my mum would say. She'd say it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, which is what she always used to say when my sister and I had a row. So I think when Ben was dropped as deputy leader, I do see the logic for that, because you suddenly had 5 members of Parliament for Reform, and I think it was absolutely the right decision that one of those should have become deputy leader. So I think that was the right decision that Farage made there.
Yeah.
I think perhaps the way it was done could have been done better, so that perhaps Ben wouldn't have felt quite so isolated.
Nigel said that he had to ditch him as deputy leader because he hadn't been elected to Parliament, and Richard Tice is an MP. He's in Parliament. I mean that's fair, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I think in terms of this little row today, I think Habib has actually won it, and won it relatively convincingly, and he's done it with quite an interesting strategy, which is, I am actually more true to Reform values than Farage is. So he said on Brexit, I'm actually more hardline. We haven't got Brexit right yet. Farage thinks we can just move on. On immigration, Farage is against deportation. I'm for it. Farage doesn't believe that demographic change is a problem in the UK. I do. He's actually going to the right of Farage here, and that actually is a really dangerous place for Farage to be in, because that's the space that he should be owning. So I thought it was actually quite clever the way that Habib positioned it.
I mean, should he be owning that space? I mean, Nigel was just centre-right, surely. He's not some...
Yeah, but otherwise then you go to the Conservatives.
I mean, that's why he doesn't want to get involved with the likes of...
Tommy Robinson.
Well, whoever, yeah. I mean...
Well, exactly. This is the thing.
Ben Habib is a very talented man, a very talented politician. He is a loss to the Reform Party, but Nigel Farage is Reform Party. If Nigel Farage steps down tomorrow, Reform will lose most of their support. No one is voting for Reform, really, because Ben Habib was there or Richard Tice is there. It's about Nigel.
I agree with that entirely, but at the same time, and this is just anecdotal, but going through social media and just hearing the vibe after this, I think a lot of people are a bit disappointed with Farage at the moment.
This is the problem with Reform. It is about Nigel. It was the same problem with UKIP. It was about Nigel. Ditto the Brexit Party. And I think really until Nigel leads a political party that isn't all about Nigel, it's never going to get the pickup I think it should have.
But I mean, Nigel is a megastar, not just here, in the US as well.
Absolutely.
But there are some decent names in Reform. Richard Tice is very competent. He's a businessman. You know, you've got Lee Anderson, who, of course, has tread the boards as a Tory MP. I don't think it is just all about Nigel, but we have you have to accept Nigel is a...
When Nigel came back to the Reform Party and said he's going to be the leader, their support surged. That's not from Tice. I know Tice. Tice is a good friend of mine. I think Tice would actually be a better Prime Minister than Farage would be, but Farage has got the personality and the charisma. No one else has that. Keir Starmer hasn't got that. If Farage had the kind of money available to him that the Labour Party have, Reform would be doing even better.
Of course, the interesting thing that Ben Habib, I think, has really hit the nail on the head on is the whole party setup makes it about Nigel Farage. You know, he's the major shareholder. It's not a political party that has members. It is a limited company. And so members don't really have any say in who the leader is or whatever. Now, Farage has talked about democratising the party. I think Ben Habib was quite right to point out that that's not being done. Yeah, Nigel is the big star. It is about Nigel. Yes, there are other great people in Reform, but...
You could say that the same about Trump in America, though. I'm not saying Nigel is a Trump.
Well,
but Trump is MAGA in America.
I don't think you can, because the Democratic Party, the Republican Party has got that big history behind it. So the Republican Party is not all about Trump.
And also, I think there's something in the American psyche which gravitates towards that cult of personality thing. I don't think that's there to the same extent amongst the British people.
Can I ask you about Camilla Tominey's column tonight in The Telegraph? She said Reform's gaining momentum and could soon initiate the biggest political revolution since Brexit.
Well,
I mean, that's pretty hard-hitting.
I hope that's true. I was really disappointed. I thought Kemi Badenoch was a great leader for the Conservative Party who could really challenge both Labour and potentially Reform. But I was very disappointed when last week she would not commit to rowing back the tax hikes that Rachel Reeves brought in the budget. I think that was a bad move. And I think if she keeps making mistakes like that, because I think that was a mistake, I think Reform is going to do even better.
I don't think Reform are going to ever be in power unless we change our political system here from how it currently is, first past the post and all that. It ain't going to happen.
This is the thing. Everyone knows where this is going. You can't have two parties on the right in this system of government. So there's going to have to be some sort of accommodation that is reached. The question is which party will have the balance of power to have the better spot at the negotiating table. But a negotiation is going to have to happen.
Well, you'd have to say it would be the Tories doing a deal, willing to stand down in certain seats to make way for Reform.
Nigel Farage, sorry to interrupt you, Ben, but Nigel Farage, what he's done well more recently is he comes across more like a political leader. He's not just about... You look at Ed Davey, Mr Gimmicks, stepping into Christmas. You know, Nigel was actually being taken seriously. Keir Starmer crossing the floor publicly and going to speak to Nigel Farage, that's a huge deal.
Talking of Ed Davey, I know we mock him and, he's a bit cringe, but he did win 70 seats at the general election. He's done his job.
Oh, good for him. He won 70 seats. No one knows who he is. Where is he? He's off making...
He was my
TikTok
MP.
videos.
I can tell you exactly where he is. He's in Surbiton. That's where I used to live.
The fact that he won 70 and Reform won 5, that this is a broken political system.
Yeah.
OK, interesting. All right, any particular seats you think Reform should be targeting? I mean, it's a long
I think
long
the Red
time
Wall
away,
seats.
Yeah.
Absolutely, the Red Wall seats. Absolutely. Go after Labour. It was the same with UKIP, same with Brexit. It's people say, oh, they're old Tories. That is so not true. That is such a misunderstanding.
Well, that was one of Ben Habib's criticisms. He said that he didn't agree with Reform's direction of hiring all the old Tory rejects.
I agree.
The old Tory... I was about to call them duffers, but they're not all duffers. And Dame Andrea Jenkins certainly isn't a duffer. What did you make of Andrea's defection?
I think in the grand scheme it means nothing. Reform don't have any power in Parliament, I'm afraid. It means nothing. Unless we can change the political system in this country so people vote and the party gets the most votes actually gets more seats, nothing's going to change. In 5 years' time, we'll be talking about whether it's going to be Labour or whether it's going to be some kind of coalition government that takes over. It will not be reform.
I think Farage actually as well. He hinted that he'd be open to lowering the voting age now to 16.
Well, again, it's interesting. Again, I'm actually opposed to that, to be clear. But it is interesting. This idea that only old people vote for Farage and UKIP and Reform is, again, also absolute rubbish. It simply isn't true.
Yeah, Nigel said yesterday, did you see that clip where he walked out the Sky News interview? He said they were trying to get him to talk about James McMurdoch and his previous convictions, and Nigel said, I don't need to be here and do this. I've got 1 million followers on TikTok. I've got this, this and this. And then he said, I'm going for lunch. See you later. And the TikTok point was important because, of course, so many youngsters on TikTok and social media. And Nigel and Reform's online presence is massive. And they are getting a lot of youngsters, you know. You not think, Will?
Like a bit, but, you know, he's getting half his own supply. You know, the left-wing, 16-year-olds are going to go for the left-wing party 80 to 20.
I'm not so sure. I think things are changing.
Oh, not that much. Not that much. It would still be a net loss if you were to lower the voting age for Conservative or Reform. You know, if you're going to give it 16-year-olds.
I think you're right.
And that's been the case for 2,000 years. Young people vote left.
But I think that is still broadly true. But I don't think it's as true as it used to be.
OK.
It's just my feeling.
Good stuff. Thank you, panel. Let's move on to the Great British Giveaway and your chance to win a whopping £50,000 in tax-free cash. It's the biggest cash prize we've ever given away, and it could be yours. Here's all the details you need to win.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British Giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
All right, very good luck to you. Coming up, an Oxford Union debate on whether Israel is an apartheid state descended into absolute chaos last night, and we've got the videos as well to show you as speakers were shut down and even kicked out. I'll be speaking to broadcaster and columnist Jonathan Sakadotti, who was there last night giving a talk. You don't want to miss it. Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Joined by international life coach Cheryl Findlay, who has joined forces with a Liverpool business owner, Kate Hill, of sustainable sportswear brand Lola Star, to empower women and inspire women across the nation. And to celebrate this partnership with the new Lola Star collection, the two will be hosting an exclusive event next Saturday.
The brand was launched after, well, your story. You lost how much weight?
So 16 stone, which is over £220, which I know is quite significant. But during that kind of decade-long journey, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about what it takes to be successful, to be happy, to be well, and to just live an incredible life every day.
Are you giving them goals to work towards or helping them structure their life?
Yeah, so I don't give out goals, absolutely not. It's all about whatever an individual wants. So what we do to begin with is we understand, like, where are you now? Where are you thriving? Where do you feel really happy and excited in your life? And what's lacking? Like, where would you like to feel better? Where would you like to improve? And then we take it from there.
I'd love to take that on board. I'd love to be my true self and fulfil my potential. So have you got any practical tips on how to do that?
Yeah, so we start with clarity, right? Like, you need to know, it's such a busy, fast-paced world we live in. There's so much sensory overload. You know, it'd be so easy to be distracted. So we need to kind of quiet all that noise down and start with, where do I want to focus? Pick 2 or 3 things. Where do I want to focus? And then we define the goal. What would I like that area of my life to look, not just look like, but feel like? And then we take it from there. So that's where you would start. I actually had a cancer diagnosis in 2019.
Oh.
And I just decided if I was going to be lucky enough to be on the other side of it, I wasn't going to play small anymore.
GB News, the people's...
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, crazy story this. An Oxford Union debate on whether Israel is an apartheid state responsible for genocide descended into absolute chaos last night as speakers were shut down and even thrown out. Watch this. Unbelievably, the House voted in favour of the motion by 278 votes to 59. That's about 75% or something. One of the speakers at the debate joins me now, the broadcaster and columnist Jonathan Sakadotti. Jonathan, thank you for joining me this evening. Your tweet, I picked it up today. You were saying that it was just an absolute shambles. Your own speech, your own talk was getting heckled and interrupted. Just talk me through the absolute chaos of last night, if you would.
I was a student at Oxford University over 20 years ago, and the Union was something quite different then. It's seen by many as the last bastion of free speech in this nation, and of course it has made many prime ministers and leading politicians and people leading in other areas of public life as well. So it was quite a shock to go back there and see that there'd been this sort of infiltration and takeover of kind of mafia-like people who decided to try to organise an extremely biased, unwelcoming and frankly disturbing debate experience. We went there in good faith to debate this motion. Obviously it was going to be controversial, especially in a university, but they had absolutely packed the chamber with people entirely on one side. During the process of organising the debate, they'd played hard and fast with trying to cancel invitations to speakers on our side who they'd agreed to invite because I think they were afraid of their powerful message and voice. I'm talking in particular about my 2 colleagues who are Arabs and had an experience, each one of them, that disproved the allegations of genocide and apartheid. And then, of course, when we did arrive, the president turned out not to be chairing the debate, but actually to be taking part in it against us, despite having invited us. And he then decided to use his speech to try to be rude to us. All of this while the crowd in the room were baying, sneering, laughing, cursing in Arabic at us. The whole experience was quite shocking, and I don't think it's one that really furthers the cause of free speech or debate or education at university.
Am I right in saying the son of one of the Hamas founders was there as well, who was, what's his name? Just remind me.
Mossab Hassan Youssef, who is an extraordinary voice in the world at the moment, because there are very few people, in fact, I don't think there are any other people, who could speak with direct experience from having been within the closest circles of Hamas, having been the son of a founder of Hamas and a senior Hamas figure, and then having changed to helping the Israelis to avoid many deaths through suicide bombings being carried out by Hamas. He informed on them for 10 years. Of course, he wrote a fantastic book about it, and there was a film about it as well. And over the last year plus since the war, he's been doing countless media appearances and appearances on campus, trying to explain the situation to students, to people who don't understand it well. His voice is absolutely unique. We lined him up to replace a speaker who pulled out at the last minute. The editor of the Jewish Chronicle, I think, didn't like the sound of the other speakers on the other side. So Mossad very heroically actually stepped in to replace him. And I think that the fact that the union president didn't want him there was evident after he told us he had invited him. We had cleared his schedule with him that he could come, and then it turned out he hadn't even bothered to send the invitation. So all along, it was very clear that they didn't want this debate to go well.
He was booed, wasn't he? Sorry to interrupt. He was booed, wasn't he?
Extremely disrespectfully treated. He was booed. Yosef Haddad as well, who was on our team, he's an Israeli Arab who served in the IDF, spoke to the lies of the apartheid slur, also was booed and jeered. He was kicked out of the chamber by the president after some members of the audience stamped on an image that he'd brought with him of the Arab hostages being held by Hamas. Yet he was thrown out.
Hang on a second, sorry. People were stamping on pictures of the Israeli hostages in Gaza?
The Arab hostages in Gaza, the Arabs who had been held by Hamas in Gaza, taken from Israel, and they stamped on that image. The level of disrespect was just something else. You really couldn't believe it. And it really was a very sinister experience for all of us there. You know, we were very proud to be there to put our case and also to help students to try to understand things better, to try to be better informed, to try to see through their own echo chambers of lies or misunderstandings. And as I said in my speech, this was really an appeal to prejudice. It wasn't an appeal to reason, this motion. The apartheid and genocide slurs in particular are two of the most dreadful things that Israel could be accused of. We were there to illustrate how, under the rules of law, and also generally just thinking about how these things have operated over the last year, Israel has gone to extraordinary lengths to make sure that as many civilians as possible are kept safe during its military action in Gaza, despite the fact that Hamas actually makes sure as many of them are sacrificed. Hamas is engaged in the activity of child sacrifice, sacrificing its own civilians in order to try to escalate those numbers so that Israel will be condemned for those deaths. And Israel is doing better than almost any other Western nation, or better than all Western nations, in terms of avoiding civilian deaths compared to the number of combatants who have been killed in its activities. So these slurs were absolutely unjustified, but the union had no intention at all for us to get a fair hearing, and had packed the room so that, of course, we would be jeered at, treated badly, and then, of course, lose the debate as well. But we didn't lose in terms of the actual argument.
No, I mean, so 75% voted in favour of the motion calling Israel an apartheid state responsible for genocide. I mean, does that make, by definition, the Oxford Union supporters of terrorism?
Well, you know, it's very interesting because Mossad actually asked them at one point. He is famous because he informed on Hamas to avoid civilian deaths through suicide bombings to Israel. He told them information. After he explained that to the audience, he then asked them how many people in the room, if they had had information ahead of time about October 7th, would have given that information to the authorities to avoid the deaths and the carnage and the massacres. A handful of people put up their hands. So that really did show, through a show of hands, that actually the vast majority of people in that room were supportive of terrorism, supportive of Hamas, and supportive of its actions on October the 7th. Outrageous.
Unbelievable. Jonathan, sorry you and your friends and colleagues went through that. I saw the videos earlier and I was just dumbfounded. You know, Great Britain 2024. Jonathan Sakadotti, thank you for your time this evening. Wow, OK. Coming up, I'll be bringing you the first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press with my panel, and we'll be looking, I love this, we'll be looking at Apple's refreshing new festive ad that goes in the opposite direction of Jaguar. There won't be a dry eye in the house. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The weekend is upon us and it's going to be much milder than it has been for the past few days. Not a lot of sunshine around. Most places, certainly tomorrow, will be dry. Low pressure sitting to the west, high pressure sitting to the east. That means our winds are coming up from the south. There is this weather front draped across the country at the moment, fizzling out as it crosses eastern England, so just a few spots of rain here, but it's made for a very wet day across parts of Scotland. That rain heading its way up across the Northern Isles. Further showers following on here, but most other places having a dry night. A lot of cloud around. That will keep those temperatures up. Still pretty chilly out there this evening across the east, but by morning, 6-7 degrees Celsius, and in the west, well, we start the weekend in double digits, and for most of us, a very mild Saturday. For most of us, though, it's also going to be a fairly cloudy Saturday. A lot of that cloud sitting over the hills as well. So some poor visibility on some of the higher routes. The hills, though, acting as a bit of a barrier. So with some shelter, parts of northwest England and northeast Wales may well see some good breaks in the cloud. And the same goes for northeastern parts of Scotland here. I suspect we should see some good spells of sunshine as we go through the day. But for most, it will be predominantly cloudy. That cloud, as I said, tending to sit around, particularly over the hills. But it may break up a little as we go through the day, so you may see skies tending to brighten. But a showery rain will drift its way across northern Scotland. The odd shower elsewhere in the west, but many places just having a dry day. And it will be mild, double digits certainly, and many places getting into the teens. Where we see a bit of sunshine, those temperatures could be a little higher. Still quite breezy, particularly in western areas. Getting very windy on Saturday night across the northwest of Scotland. Still gusty here on Sunday. A bit more rain on Sunday. This line will work its way from west to east, and then another band of showery rain will come in from the west as well. So, yeah, it will be a bit wetter on Sunday, but still, it won't rain all day. There'll be some brighter spells coming through. And, yes, the wind's still coming up from the south, so Sunday also looking very mild.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, welcome back. The first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages have just dropped. Let's start with the Daily Mail. Actually, all the papers are dominated by that one story on assisted dying. MPs vote for a leap into the unknown as assisted dying bill passes first stage by narrow 55 majority. The Independent. Assisted dying, MPs take historic step into the unknown. The Times, MPs back assisted dying. The Daily Express, now future generations will be spared ordeals we suffer. Says Dame Esther Ranson, of course, who was spearheading the movement. The I newspaper, assisted dying set to become legal within 3 years after the historic vote. And the Daily Telegraph leads with a slightly different one. Breaking this evening, Vladimir Zelensky, the Ukrainian leader, has said that he will give up territory for peace. Only, though, panel, Suzanne, Will, JJ, only in exchange for NATO membership, which, as far as I remember Vladimir Putin saying, was an absolute red line, Suzanne.
Yeah, absolutely. Putin certainly wouldn't stand for that. But I'm interested to know what the Ukrainian people might think about this. You know, the deaths they've had, their young men slaughtered, and then suddenly having been absolutely adamant that this war has got to be won, Zelensky is talking about giving up territory. I think this is quite remarkable.
I said at the very beginning of this war, this conflict, that it was only going to end with Putin being able to take some of that land, and that it was pointless, and that these Ukrainian men are going to go to their deaths, and eventually Zelensky will have to give up some land. And that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, JJ's exactly right. Unfortunately, you cannot beat a nuclear-armed power that cannot afford to lose. That's always been the reality of this war. Now, the interesting thing is here, this has come after Trump has obviously now been re-elected as president. You have to wonder what conversations have been going on in the background to make Zelensky say that.
Well,
That was exactly my thought.
I heard today from a source that Trump had given Zelensky an ultimatum. He said, if you don't come to the negotiating table, from January, there will be no more money and no more weapons. So you have to come to the table at least to start dialogue. And I heard that before this story came out this evening, so I think it was probably true. Trump saying that if they do agree a peace deal, the US promises even more money and weapons to deter future Russian aggression. Zelensky gave an interview tonight. He said that the NATO umbrella would needed to be instilled in Ukraine in order for peace. But yeah, Vladimir Putin, he said many, many times that is an absolute red line.
Never going to happen.
It is interesting, though, isn't it? You know, Trump always swore, he said from day one, I'll stop this war. Maybe he was right.
I think I know people think I'm a lefty that I'd be against Trump, but when it comes to things like this, he's exactly the person we need in power.
Yeah.
He will stop this war. Next stop will be the Middle East.
Yeah, strong men respect strong men.
Yeah.
They do not respect weak leaders.
But Suzanne, he says nasty things on Twitter, so we can't...
Do you know what? I always said Trump would be a great president if only he'd never gone on Twitter. Then he wouldn't have had half the trouble he'd had last time.
No, but I guess that's why people love him. They love especially in 16, they love the brashness. We'd never seen anybody like Trump before. He was a new breed of politician, and I think he is his own, he's a star in his own territory.
I'll never forget when he said to North Korea, my red button's bigger than his. And I was thinking, what the heck is this idiot doing? But it worked.
Yeah, he gets the job done. OK, I want to share with you this new advert from technology powerhouse Apple. They surprised everyone, even me last night, as they released a very traditional and emotional festive advert featuring a father with hearing loss on Christmas Day. Try and watch this without crying.
Listen. Light the fire. You place the flowers in the vase that you bought today. I'm so excited. Here you go, Haley.
What is that?
See ya. Everything is easy 'cause of
I love you, Papa.
Ben's gone. We've lost Ben.
It's just it's the parental thing which gets me.
We've lost Ben. It is somewhat surreal seeing a photogenic white nuclear family on TV. I feel like I've been transported. Transported back to the 1990s.
So rare.
But not just the advert being great and the song being emotive. The fact that these earpods can act as a hearing aid for people.
I know.
That's fantastic.
It's brilliant. If only they were a bit cheaper.
I know. Sorry to give Apple a 2-minute free plug tonight, but the advert was so good. As you said, Will, it's a great change to see, just a nuclear family there, just normal people, no box ticking.
It's like normal people.
Stuff.
Normal people.
Well, no, like DI box ticking, having just.
They're still normal people, though, Ben.
Come on, you know what it's like.
You know what I mean? Just totally overrepresented.
Every advert these days has got to have a mixed race couple. It's got to have, possibly even at least 6 different people from 6 different cultures in it.
But this is bizarre. But the great thing is now we've got actually an interesting experiment between Jaguar and Apple because they've gone in 2 different directions with their marketing. Let's see, let's see sales. Let's see which one wins.
Yeah, and also it's so pro-family as well. I mean, the birth rate. Sorry, we're going to get quite deep into this, but the birth rate, of course, is falling worldwide. I think there's a bit of an agenda for people not to have kids and families. And
this ad really affected you, didn't it, Ben?
I was on the train. I saw it on the train home last night, and I was just sitting there. People probably would have thought I was drunk or something, and told me into my cider. But it really moved me, and it was just, it was just seeing the dads and the kids.
Well, that's it. You think about your own children.
Yeah, exactly. You think of your own children. That's why it was so emotional for me. Also reminds you how quickly children grow up.
Yeah.
Just time flies. It's crazy. Anyway, we've already discussed on the show today about Sir Keir Starmer walking across the Commons to speak to Nigel Farage. We haven't shown you the full clip, so let's take a look at the clip and then we'll discuss it. So I think this looks pretty normal. I don't see what the big deal is, but lots of people today are saying, what the hell is going on here?
I'm confused. The people at home who are calling out this and saying it's terrible. I saw someone on X saying they're playing us, they're all mates behind closed doors. Are you stupid? You think there's cross-party political groups across Parliament. They all work in the same place. You go to the canteen area, go into the restaurant, go into the bars, they're all standing there talking because they all actually get along. And this is where the world should be. The three of us disagree. We're from different political strains, but we can all have a chat and have a pint.
I don't want to see any of you again after tonight.
Oh, well, you won't miss you last night on the show.
See ya. See you later. Yeah, Suzanne, it's people online saying they're all, you know, it's one big club and you're not in it and that kind of thing.
Well, do you know, there's something in that. It is a bit of a club. I remember when I first got into politics and started doing a lot of media when I was in UKIP, I felt very much like an outsider. And then eventually I kind of felt I was part of the club, and it is kind of a club.
Bit cliquey.
But it's quite funny, sort of looking at that, you think, oh, Nigel's now part of the establishment. He's right in there. I'd love to know what they were talking about.
Well, who knows? Maybe the Chagos silence. I mean, I think it's good to see because, of course, it's in Britain's interest for Nigel to be in some capacity, maybe not as an official ambassador, but as a link to the US. We know who's already organised meetings with Lammy and David Lammy and Trump's team. So
I know. If I'd have been Nigel in that situation and Keir Starmer came schmoozing up to me at the other side of the house, I'd be saying, right, how about putting Reform MPs on some committees then? Because you blocked us from going on committees. If you think we're now part of the club, stick us on some select committees, please.
To your point, Ben, it is great how in a Trump world, Farage is the de facto Foreign Affairs Minister in the UK.
Yeah. I think, well, some argue that the Labour are missing a trick by not utilising Farage with the Chagos silence, for example. Make use of him. You don't have to like him, but just be...
Look at this footage, would you? The weird thing is not that they're talking, it's that is actually the most normal I've ever seen Starmer look.
Yeah, he smiles.
He doesn't look like a robot for once.
No.
Hey, let's face it, Nigel Farage is far more interesting than the people he shares the front bench with.
And I think it was David Davis who was in the trio before he walked off. Let's have one more quick look before we go to the break. Notice how he grabs Nigel's arm as well, quite affectionately, dare I say.
He actually looks half human.
Smile there.
Yeah.
David Davis is there.
It's bizarre.
I don't think we should read too much into it. It's just...
it's the robot that came to life.
Just colleagues having a chat.
Yeah. Mine's a gin and tonic. Yeah, I'll have it.
See you in, what's the bar called? Strangers.
Strangers
See you in
bar.
Strangers afterwards.
Yeah.
Anyway, coming up, we'll have more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages and we'll be revealing the panel's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Back in just a tick.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Fabio, thank you for coming in. It's great to see you.
Nice to meet you.
So you were born near Rome?
Yeah, in a very small town. It's called Serrone, about an hour south of Rome. Yeah, on the hillside.
Was it a place of excellent cuisine?
It is indeed a place of excellent cuisine and red wines. In fact, it's the only DOCG red wine of the region. Yeah.
Most of your career, I mean, this may seem self-evident, you've cooked Italian. I'm thinking that's quite a challenge to cook Italian in Malaysia, to cook Italian in Bermuda or Turkey. Was that a challenge?
It was, yeah, but I like challenges, so that's one of the reasons why I started to travel, because of my job. For example, in Malaysia, I've been sent there to twist a grill restaurant into an Italian restaurant inside a five-star hotel. And I was doing the chef training for the local chefs. And then I build the menus, I train the chefs, and then I eventually go back.
In Italian food, is there lots of innovation?
I would say in the past 10 years, yes. It used to be a very traditional cuisine, but in the past 10, 15 years, Italian chefs, they are a bit more open-minded, I would say.
Give us some examples of your innovation.
Well, hide and seek is very well around the innovation. In that bar is a bar and kitchen where we have a shared plate concept, where we try to take our guests in a culinary journey, starting from a classic dish and then reinventing to a modern twist. Usually I like to twist the style of cuisine between different countries, different continents.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. More newspaper front pages have just dropped. We'll start with the Sun newspaper. Not sure how I feel about this headline. Star accused of 3 sex assaults. BBC was warned 12 years ago. Greg, quote-unquote, the groper. Yeah, they put those in quotes for a reason. A bit risky, if you ask me. The Daily Star, the gross grocer.
No quotes.
Ulrika Johnson blasts MasterChef Greg over sick rape joke. Of course, he denies all these allegations. And the Daily Mirror, MPs back assisted dying. And Ulrika Johnson again at the top left talking about Greg Wallace. Should we talk about him very delicately, quickly, panel? What's your thoughts?
I'd like to. So, once again, we have trial by media.
Yeah.
Now, this man's not yet been found guilty of anything, and I really worry that once again we're seeing the whole principle of innocent until proven guilty being kicked out, and I think that's really quite terrifying. So things will come out, and what will be, and what will happen. But I think this trial by media is so wrong. And the charity that's dropped him, I understand where they're coming from. They feel they have a reputation to...
What's the charity?
It's, I can't remember, but he has been dropped by a charity. I'm sorry, I'd completely forget the name of it now.
That's all right.
But, you know, I think I'd have more respect for a charity that said, look, he's been a great ambassador for us. We understand there are allegations here, but nothing's been proven yet. So until it is, we're sticking by him. That would be my line.
The one thing I would say, and I agree with the point around trial by media, if one person comes out with an accusation, then that's one thing. When 13 people come out with accusations, there has to be a bit of fire where there's smoke.
Well, you don't know that.
I don't know that, and for the record, I don't know that. But 13 people is a lot of people to make accusations.
Can people make false allegations all the time?
I agree with all that.
The charity is ambitious about autism.
Autism, that's right.
They've announced that Greg Wallace is no longer working with the 60-year-old in light of recent allegations. They said, we have let him know our decision and thanked him for his support of our work over the last 2 years. I just think, JJ... yeah, it's trial by media, and also, even if he's cleared of these allegations, he's still, in the court of public opinion, been absolutely rinsed. There's no way he's ever going to go back to MasterChef, even if he's innocent.
Yeah, but what would you suggest, that the press don't report on accusations made by other celebrities about other celebrities? Of course they're going to do it. That has to happen. This isn't... We're not talking about a couple of random people down the pub. We're talking about prominent celebrities, female celebrities who have come out and made similar accusations about one male celebrity. And we can say, well, it's trial by media. It's not trial by media. People can go on social media and say what they want about it. This is the press reporting...
It is trial by media.
On... No, the media are not putting him on trial. The media are reporting what other female celebrities are saying about him.
They are, but the fact is he's had to stand down and he's lost his connection with this charity. I think that's a very dangerous precedent. I think you should... not be forced out of your job.
I'd agree with that.
Or forced out of your charitable role until you've been found guilty of something. Then, by all means, chuck the book at you.
And I don't think this is going to end up in a court case. I don't think he's going to end up going to court about this. I don't think that's going to happen at all. But I would say people who work in television and work in media will not read these front pages and think, oh, that's a surprise. We never heard these accusations before about him.
But that's only people working in the media, you say?
Yeah.
What about the general public who aren't involved in our media bubble or politics? You've got some white van man who picks this up, the paper, and sees Greg the groper. He's not been found guilty of anything. He denies all charges.
No investigation.
He's been called a groper on the front page of the Sun.
The Sun newspaper would not put this headline on the front if they were not quite convinced with the story.
Yeah, that's probably the case, but my point stands, innocent until proven guilty. And I feel increasingly in our society that very, very important principle is being eroded.
But I don't think
deeply concerning.
But I don't think he's going to end up going to court about this. I don't think anyone's going to press charges.
But there is going to be an investigation.
There will be an investigation by the BBC.
Consequences of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okie doke. I want to show you another clip I saw yesterday. I'm full of them today. Yesterday was Thanksgiving in the US, of course, and Donald Trump posted a meme on his X account featuring a scene from the film National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, but with a political twist. Watch this.
If this turkey tastes half as good as it looks, I think we're all in for a very big treat.
Save the neck for me, Clark.
Okay, Adam.
There's the Trump dance. You could say Mr. Trump absolutely roasted the Democrats this holiday season.
Very good.
Very good. Isn't AI just so mad now? Just all this kind of, all these video graphics and things. Yeah, sorry, just thought I'd share that with you. It tickled me in a very juvenile way. Should we get on to Greatest Britain and Union Jackass? Suzanne, your Greatest Britain, please.
So my Greatest Britain is actually a group rather than individual. It's the Samaritans. I think we've had a very difficult day for a lot of people in Parliament, and the Samaritans are out there working hard 24/7, day in, day out, to support people who are lonely, depressed, disabled, ill, whatever it might be, and they do a magnificent job.
Great. Will?
Edwin Rayner, retired tropical fisherman who's found a second career as a TikTok sensation. 450,000 people now listen to his wonderful singing voice.
Should we play the clip really quickly?
On TikTok.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go.
Just picked up a contract with Disney. Good for Edwin.
What a guy, 93. JJ, your Greatest Britain.
Mine is Apple for that advert.
Yeah.
Nice and simple.
We know who's going to win now, don't we?
I'm going to go with Samaritans. It's been a day talking about dying and suicide and so on. You know, especially coming up to Christmas, it's a particularly difficult time of year for a lot of people. So, yeah, if you need help, please seek help from the Samaritans and other organisations. Samaritans win your Union Jackass.
Louise Haigh, for thinking she could be an MP when she just got a criminal conviction. I think it's absolutely appalling.
Hypocrite. Will?
Tahir Ali for suggesting that we should have blasphemy laws in this country. It's reprehensible.
JJ?
Pep Guardiola, because Man City are just falling apart. They had a 3-0 lead and they end up drawing.
Are you a City fan?
No, I'm a Spurs fan.
Are you a Spurs fan?
Yeah.
Oh, no, off you go. Get out. Get out. Who's my Union Jackass today? So who's Man City?
Tahir Ali.
Tahir Ali.
Louise Haigh.
Louise Haigh. Tahir Ali is my Union Jackass because...
It's a good choice.
I don't know who you think you are trying to promote blasphemy laws in this country. No religion is immune from criticism, ridicule, or whatever else in this country. And I think it's an all-out dangerous slope, and it's an attack on free speech. So. Yeah, there we go. This is my last show. Patrick is back on Monday. You'll be pleased to know. I've been here for 2.5 weeks. It's been a bit of a slog, but I've loved it. Thank you for your company. And I've read all your emails and your comments on your say this evening saying thank you and well done. I really do appreciate it. I've read them all. So thank you very much. Coming up next is Headliners presented by Cressida Weston. Cressida, what's in store tonight?
Hello, Ben. I think you've done a fantastic job these past 2 weeks, if I may say so.
Bless you.
Coming up on Headlines tonight, we've got Nick Dixon and my favourite scamp, Lewis Schaefer, everybody's favourite scamp. We're going to be talking about the BBC licence fee going up again. Boo. You should watch GB News instead. We're also going to be talking about English and Welsh racism against each other, which is a new one on me. So join us at 11 o'clock for all tomorrow's news tonight.
Lovely, can't wait. Yeah, that English-Wales story absolutely got me going. You know, is calling a Welsh person a sheep lover racist?
I've heard worse than that.
I don't think so. OK, that's it for tonight. Thank you again. Patrick's back on Monday. I'm on Breakfast next week, covering for Eamon Monday to Wednesday, if you can be bothered to get up that early. And, it's your weather coming up next. It's going to be a cold weekend, wrap up warm. What's your plans this weekend?
Wrapping up warm.
Wrapping up warm,
yes,
indeed.
definitely.
Right. I'll leave you to it. Enjoy your weekend. Here's Headliners, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The weekend is upon us and it's going to be much milder than it has been for the past few days. Not a lot of sunshine around. Most places, certainly tomorrow, will be dry. Low pressure sitting to the west, high pressure sitting to the east. That means our winds are coming up from the south. There is this weather front draped across the country at the moment, fizzling out as it crosses eastern England, so just a few spots of rain here, but it's made for a very wet day across parts of Scotland. That rain heading its way up across the Northern Isles. Further showers following on here, but most other places having a dry night. A lot of cloud around. That will keep those temperatures up. Still pretty chilly out there this evening across the east, but by morning, 6-7 degrees Celsius, and in the west, well, we start the weekend in double digits, and for most of us, a very mild Saturday. For most of us, though, it's also going to be a fairly cloudy Saturday. A lot of that cloud sitting over the hills as well. So some poor visibility on some of the higher routes. The hills, though, acting as a bit of a barrier. So with some shelter, parts of northwest England and northeast Wales may well see some good breaks in the cloud. The same goes for northeastern parts of Scotland here. I suspect we should see some good spells of sunshine as we go through the day. But for most, it will be predominantly cloudy. That cloud, as I said, tending to sit around, particularly over the hills. But it may break up a little as we go through the day, so you may see skies tending to brighten. But a showery rain will drift its way across northern Scotland. The odd shower elsewhere in the west, but many places just having a dry day. And it will be mild, double digits certainly, and many places getting into the teens. Where we see a bit of sunshine, those temperatures could be a little higher. Still quite breezy, particularly in western areas. Getting very windy on Saturday night across the northwest of Scotland. Still gusty here on Sunday. A bit more rain on Sunday. This line will work its way from west to east, and then another band of showery rain will come in from the west as well. So, yeah, it will be a bit wetter on Sunday, but still, it won't rain all day. There'll be some brighter spells coming through. And, yes, the wind's still coming up from the south, so Sunday also looking very mild.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The latest Channel 4 Dispatches documentary has revealed details about the royal family's finances, including reports that private royal estates have received millions of pounds of income from public bodies and charities.
Morning, and morning, Stephen. Absolutely, I'm not shocked either. And also, as a former butler, I was also a duchy rentee. I used to rent one of the properties, and we were always aware of the property portfolio. I don't think it's kind of a big news thing. Obviously, part of the, if you like, the business side is these two duchies, Cornwall and Lancaster, and the late Queen obviously was the Duke as well of Lancaster, and now you've got the Prince was obviously, or the King, when he was Prince, had the duchy. And these properties, portfolios as well, I mean, obviously they make money. I mean, but they've been around for, I think they go back to George III, if not before.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, it's 11 o'clock, which means it's time for tomorrow's newspapers tonight. Join us over the next hour to find out one more reason why you should watch GB News more than the BBC, what the students at Cambridge University are really learning, and the shocking truth about what builders think of attractive women. I'm Cressida Wetton, and tonight we have Lewis Schaefer and Nick Dixon taking you through tomorrow's top stories. This is Headliners. But before tomorrow's news, let's go to tonight's headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Good evening. These are your headlines at 11 o'clock. Ukraine will ask NATO for membership next week, according to a letter seen by Reuters news agency. The letter reflects Ukraine's renewed push to secure an invitation to join NATO, which is part